On this spot, on November 8, 2016, an elderly figure began appearing on random moonlit evenings outside the Main Street SkyTrain entrance, offering small live moths in glass bottles for purchase. Those who have purchased a moth report distressing dreams and ontological disorientation, often expressing uncertainty as to whether they are the moth or the moth is themselves.
File 328D.
With their first recorded appearance occurring on November 8, 2016, the Moonlight Moth Cellar of Main Street and Terminal is perhaps one of the more subtle ways in which reality can be seen to be fraying throughout East Vancouver.
Physicality and social contextual framework.
While the gender and ethnicity of the figure is unknown, as they are wrapped quite heavily in fabrics of many different textures and colors, obscuring their general identity, what can be seen of their face, optical and oral apertures, suggests an indeterminately elderly age and an unquantifiable background. Some have suggested that the moth seller's accent denotes a Slavic or Germanic background, while others are quite insistent that the regional linguistic affectations are more likely of Asian influence, suggesting of a childhood spent speaking perhaps Mandarin or Korean.
Amphiasmenoptera epistemological conditions.
The moths themselves are of a uniquely iridescent variety and come in a plethora of sizes and even shapes. But in the years since their first appearance, over 24 citizens are estimated to have purchased moths, with medical records revealing that within days of acquisition, all reported dreams of being trapped in an invisible enclosure, futilely battering their wings against an unseen barrier in a desperate but unattainable bid for freedom.
Containment attempts.
Agent 6 of Unit 313, Vancouver's Paranormal Investigation Squad, has stated that, while authorities have made attempts to apprehend the moth seller, it is not recommended that citizens interact with them or their moths in any way. The illustrious and devilishly handsome Agent 6 also proclaimed emphatically that winners don't use drugs, but that may have been related to something else. Of course, the moths are not illegal to purchase, as such restrictions would be near impossible to regulate. Rather, it is advised that citizens be conscious of the ontological threats posed by the moth's psychotropic influences, which some have compared to the reality-distorting capabilities of substances such as DMT, LSD, and salvia, or when you mix them together. I smoked salvia while I was on acid one time, and I saw the edge of the universe. Nearly fell off it too. But that doesn't have anything to do with this, I think.
Phenomenological theories and interpretations.
Alton Fizz, macrobiologist and researcher for the SCIAMR, Sublime Initiative for Abnormal Macro-Settlement Research, suggested that the moths could be a symbolic presence made physical, an aspect of the region's spirit or vibe. In his award-winning paper, Neurocognitive Interfaces in the Context of Ontological Displacement, a study of human perception and reality fracture, Fizz wrote,
Moths are connected to the moon. And what is the moon if not a doorway of knowledge and reason that opens in the dark of the night? I have looked into the eyes of the customers of the moth cellar, and let me tell you, they welcomed it. The change, the alteration. Maybe not at first. Obviously, that kind of enforced intellectual mutation is an extremely painful and surreal experience. But eventually, when they learned to let go, to release, to accept what was happening. They were finally able to admit to themselves a basic truth that they had always known. That everything that had ever been important to them, all their memories, their hopes, their fears, their loves, it was all just a dream. A dream had by a flying bug, trapped in a small glass jar. But how do you look yourself in the eyes after you learn that? Poor fools were better off dead.
Of course, Fizz was later discovered to be the serial murderer who'd been pinning his victims to corkboards and displaying them in glass cases throughout his home. But despite his obvious social-emotional ailments, he still seemed to have some pretty interesting ideas about the whole Moth cellar situation. Authorities have warned that a few of his victims have yet to be found, and worry there is still one final grim tableau hidden somewhere in the city, awaiting discovery.
Conclusions.
As to the Moth cellar's motivations, much can be assumed, but nothing can be truly known. Whether they are an independent agent or part of a larger conspiracy, they represent a clear manifestation of the ontological perturbations which are straining the atomic coherence of local space-time matrices. But are they trying to hurt people or help them? As with so much of the studied phenomena in this paper, it's really a question of personal perspective. Look, buy the moths, don't buy the moths. It's really up to you. You're choosing your own adventure, that's what free will is. But don't be surprised when you find yourself bumping into walls that don't seem to be there and dreaming while you're still awake. You want to know what that feels like, your mind and body subtly warping over time, confusing your own awareness of yourself, your consciousness undergoing a physical metamorphosis that you experience in real time? If that sounds good to you, then head down to Main and Terminal on some moonlit night and look around.
See if you can find somebody who wants to sell you a moth in a jar.